Welcome to Right on Wednesday. This week's word is entitled Behave Like You Believe. I'm in Hebrews 3. And the author of this chapter, he starts off by saying that Moses was faithful over his house, just like Jesus is faithful over his house. Now, when they say house, they mean God's people, God's chosen people. So, we know that Moses led God's people out of Egyptian bondage into freedom. Likewise, Jesus is faithful over his house to lead us out of bondage, which is sin, strongholds, addictions, anything that's keeping you captive. Jesus is able to deliver us into freedom, just like Moses led the Israelites out into freedom. Now, quick point. Sometimes we struggle with sin, addictions, and strongholds, and we keep trying to come out of them on our own, and we're not able to do so. But be mindful that the Israelites did not come out of bondage on their own. God sent a leader, God sent Moses to help them be led out of captivity. God sent Jesus to be your leader, to lead you out of captivity. You do not have to try to do this by yourself. He sent Moses for the Israelites. He has sent Jesus for us to lead us out of captivity. All right? Don't try to do it on your own. Let Jesus lead you. All right? So, the writer goes on and he says, he's basically saying that Moses was faithful over his house and that Jesus was faithful over his house to encourage us to be faithful over ours, to be faithful over our faith, to be faithful in our belief. So he brings up the Israelites, and we know how the Israelites, they were, as God says, a stiff-necked people. They murmured, they complained, they just did not believe God. And so because they did not believe God, they didn't get to enter into the promised land. So I want to read two verses. This is Hebrews 3, verse 12. He says, "Take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief and departing from the living God." He's saying, they had an evil heart of unbelief, right? And in verse 19, he says, "So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief." So, the Israelites were not able to enter into the promised land because of unbelief. They went, and this is, if you read Numbers 13 and 14, you see that they scoured out the land. They saw how beautiful the land was. It flowed with milk and honey. It was prosperous. It was abundant. It had pomegranates and figs and grapes. And the grapes were so big and abundant that two men had to carry it out on one pole. One cluster of grapes was that big. That's how abundant this land was. But they saw it, and they also saw giants over in the land, and they said, well, we can't take it. We can't take this land. Now, that was in direct disobedience to what God said, because God told them the land was theirs. He told them that they would take it. Joshua and Caleb were the only ones who believed God. Their disobedience was evil. In fact, when they said they could not take it, the Bible tells us that that was an evil report. Again, the writer tells us to take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief. When God tells you something and you do not believe it and you're in opposition of what he says, that's an evil heart. Now, we're talking about unbelief because it says they did not enter in because of unbelief. Disobedience to God is a sure sign. It's a telltale sign that you do not believe God. Because if the Israelites would have believed God, they would have obeyed God, and they would have went in and conquered the land. For us today, if you believe God, you will obey him. God has given us commands. He has told us to flee sexual immorality, to avoid drunkenness, gossip, so many different things. And we claim that we believe him. But if you disobey him, it's evidence that you do not believe him. Just like with the Israelites. If they would have believed him, they would have done what he said. When we don't believe God, we disobey him. And so we have to behave like we believe. If Jesus tells you, I come to give you life and life more abundantly, just like they had that abundant land full of the figs and the pomegranates and the grapes, that abundant type of living is promised to us too. We can have love and joy and peace unmeasurable. But you cannot enter into that rest if you remain in unbelief and disobey God just like they did. The Hebrew writer is telling us this because their unbelief caused them to die off. They never saw the promised land. We have to believe God at what he says. And your behavior is evident of that. You can say all day that I believe in God. But if you remain in disobedience to him, that's a red flag and a telltale sign that you really do not believe him. And so, my encouragement to you, my prayer for me and for all of us, is that we will behave like we believe. Let us walk in obedience to the Lord so we can receive this abundant life that he has promised us, both here on earth and in glory with him one day. So, behave like you believe. All right, I'm in Hebrews 3. That's all I have for you today. I encourage you to go read Hebrews 3. Go read Numbers 13 and 14 as well. I pray this message has been a blessing to you all. Have a beautiful, blessed day, okay? In Jesus' name.